Okay, thanks Roddy for getting us live streamed onto YouTube. Welcome everybody to the 2020 Classified School Employees Association and District Adams 12 5-star school district negotiations. That's a mouthful. Good morning, good morning. It's nice to see you all. And we will start with some introductions. And so if I'll call on you just so we're not stepping on each other in the order I see you on my screen. If you'll share just who you are and what your role in the district is, how long you've been serving on the negotiations team, if you can think of that, and what's your favorite thing about Halloween? Okay, or what would you dress up as if you were going to be dressing up this year? So I'll start. My name is Mila Shepard. I'm the Chief of Human Resources. I have had the pleasure of negotiating with this team for the last 3 years. I think this is my fourth. 3. Thanks, Paul. And my favorite thing about Halloween is clearly chocolate candy packaged in little bite-sized morsels. So, and I don't have any costume ideas for this year. So I'm going to throw it to Lynn Pritchard. You ready, Lynn?
I'm Lynne Prichard. I'm the treasurer for CSEA. I work at Eagle Butte Elementary School as office manager. This is my 12th or 13th year here on negotiations. Not really sure. I agree with you. The best thing about Halloween is little bite-sized pieces of chocolate. And our office staff we were all going to dress up like the Geek Squad from doing so much tech support during the learning pods.
That's brilliant and so apt. Let's go to Paul.
Thank you, Mila. I was trying to cheat.
That's better.
I was trying to cheat and use the space bar. It didn't work. My name is Paul Williams. I'm president of the Classified Association. Been doing this negotiation session now for somewhere around 20 or 21 years with this team. So, so a little bit of experience. And then favorite part about Halloween is definitely the candy. Candy is amazing. And if I had to dress up for Halloween, I'd probably maybe put a wig on with some hair, maybe, and sport it for a little while.
No, we might walk right past you and not even recognize you. All right, Tony.
Good morning. My name is Tony. I am the director at Prairie Hills Elementary. I've been sitting on the negotiating team for about 6 years. My favorite thing about Halloween is the candy and the kids in the costumes. This year, we were going to dress up our base team as superheroes again. So
Our base team members all over the district are superheroes. That's a good costume too. Nicole.
Good morning, I'm Nicole Stone. I'm the HR director, and this is actually my first year in negotiations. I've served the district for over 20 years, but new into this new role. So excited to be with you all today. In terms of my favorite part of Halloween, I think it's the season. I really like the fall festivals and just I like going to the pumpkin patches and doing that. I decorate more in like the fall festival kind of thing for my house because I don't have young kids anymore, but that and the candy. And since I'm, kind of boring, I don't have the best ideas right now for Halloween. Haven't really thought about it, unfortunately, so.
All right, Lisa.
Good morning, my name is Lisa Hart. I am the resource manager for the base and nutrition department. I think this is my 5th or 6th year on negotiations, I'm not sure. Favorite part about Halloween definitely is the candy. And as far as costumes, I wouldn't be dressing up in anything because dressing up in costume just kind of wigs me out. So good. Halloween's my least favorite holiday, so I'll take President's Day over that.
President's Day. Okay. Matt.
My name is Matt Haviland, principal at Woodlawn Elementary. I've served on the classified negotiation teams for somewhere around 16 years. It's been a pleasure serving, and really appreciate all of the work that our classified employees continue to do to support our district. They're just been absolutely amazing. Favorite part about Halloween would probably be the Halloween parades that we've done here at Woodland. It's really a great time for the kids. They get really excited to be in costumes, to be able to see each other and share that tradition that's been around for probably since the building opened here. And then as far as costumes go, I think we had talked about being first responders or paying some tribute to other people who are out on the front line. So doctors, nurses, folks like that. So really appreciate the work that everybody's been doing.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Good idea. Oz.
Hi, good morning. So I'm actually just filling in for Igor, but I'm excited to be here. I've been with the district for a little over a year. This is my first time in classified negotiations, but again, super excited. As far as Halloween, I totally would encourage and recommend Paul to dress up as Bob Ross for Halloween. So that's really the only thing I have, but yeah, so thanks.
Way to go. Someone else's costume. Excellent. Julie.
I'm Julie Rodriguez. I'm the bookkeeper at Legacy High School. I've served on negotiations. I think this is my 4th year. And the favorite thing about Halloween is the creativity of people that do their own costumes and don't purchase one. They just create one.
Right. And Rob.
I'm Rob Keeney, Classified School Employee Association Vice President. I've been negotiating a contract. I think this is my 26th year. As far as Halloween, I enjoyed the little ones coming up to the door. I don't know what kind of interest we're going to have this year, but as far as a costume, not really interested this year, so I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Thanks all. Welcome. And a shout out to our IT support. Roddy, we appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us today and making it all flow smoothly. So our agenda is in the shared drive. We'll be working out of the classified negotiations shared drive. So hopefully you've been able to dive into the folder that's called Classified Negotiations Fall 2020. I do want to point out that in the drive, the team drive, there is a whole folder that's titled Letters of Agreement between CSEA and district. And Cindy did us the favor of organizing all of our random letters of agreement from over the years. So if you want a little walk down history lane, you could take a look at that. But that's a nice resource for us as well to have. So we won't spend a lot of time in that folder, but we're in the classified negotiations folder. And I'd like to take us to the norms and schedule folder and open that norms document. Are you with me there? Yeah. So these are the norms that we've traditionally had to start on time. I added a couple, and so I don't want to presume that these work for all of you. So given that there are a few, adjustments, I'd like you to look at it. One of the suggested norms that I would have is that we keep our camera on unless we need to step away briefly for some reason. Try our best to attend each of the meetings and inform a team member if you cannot. This is a pretty informal meeting. I called on you for the roll call, so to speak, but I really would expect that as anybody has anything to add, you're free to unmute and to jump into the conversation at any point. We value that contribution. You're each here with a really valuable point of view and perspective, and we need to hear every voice. And so don't be surprised if we haven't heard from you if one of us calls on you, because we value you and we want to hear what you're thinking, and you represent a constituency when you're sitting here at this table. So sometimes we agree to disagree, but we always have that mutual respect for each other and a value for our relationships. Sometimes we have off-record discussions, and so if we do need to caucus or break apart into groups, we do have some groups set up, and we can go into different Zoom meeting rooms and do that out of offline, not necessarily in the public eye. We make sure we follow through with commitments that we make at these meetings as a norm. If you do have a phone call or some other kind of interruption, we understand. We hope you'll value and prioritize this time together, but we do understand that sometimes life happens. At the conclusion, we'll make an effort to mutually agree on what areas that will be discussed at the next session. And we've always been big eaters. Food is allowed. The old norm said food at the table. So at this point, you'll just have food at your desk. But anyway, let me just pause there and see if anybody has any additional norms or any adjustments that you'd like to make to any of these. We'll use the thumbs up on the camera. If you're good with these norms, then give us a thumbs up and we'll roll. Tony, yeah, thank you. You had a thumb out of the camera range apparently. Okay, great. So, alrighty. In that same folder, we do have a schedule of meetings document. You see that and you see by looking at your calendars that we do have 4 calendar dates with times reserved today and next Friday, and then a couple more dates in November. We'll see what we need. We certainly won't meet if we don't need to. And so we'll take the time we need and we'll finish when we're finished. But we've set aside these times. Any questions or comments about the meeting schedule? You good with that? All righty. So if we come back out to the folder, we've got a couple of, we'll just look at our initial proposals. And so we've loaded 2 documents in. The CSEA's proposal is the one tied that has the date 10/30/20 on it. So Paul, do you guys want to present your initial proposal? We could all open that document. I think I'll share my screen that way. Well, no, we can all just look at it. That's fine. So Paul, you want to talk through your initial proposal?
Yeah, thanks, Mila. So first, we just want to say thanks to the district for the partnership this year and the collaboration that we've had moving through these trying times. It's been difficult on everybody, but we appreciate the joint partnership and the appreciation of employees and the joint effort to keep people employed and keep people paid. So we appreciate that effort. One of the things that we as a association felt was this year it was important for us to try and keep everything that we have in the contract intact and just do the salary type of stuff. So in our proposal this year, we're proposing basically that we roll the contract without any new openers to the 2021 negotiation session. And there's multiple reasons for that, but I think the big thing is to just maintain the contract in the current form as we move forward through these times. And then the other thing is it's been difficult to have anything of norm through these times as we're transitioning into in-person learning and remote learning and those types of things. So it was difficult to try and lock down language right now and the need for language changes when we're in this period of time. So felt like it was really, right now is a good time to just roll the contract forward. So so as far as CSA openers, that's our openers, is to roll the contract without changes to the contract. The next piece is the term of agreement. So these are our automatic reopeners, meaning that they'll automatically open every year. And that is the agreement shall become effective the first day of January 21 and remain in full force effective through the 31st day of December 2026. Next one is Article 19 in salary. Employees entitled to increments under the Article 19 of this agreement shall be moved in accordance with said article, meaning employees will receive their steps effective January 1, 2021. Article 20.1, effective January 1, 2021, eligible employees shall receive a cost of living adjustment, COLA, amount to be negotiated. So through this process, that amount, depending on various factors, we would negotiate that amount. Salary and reopener, Article 20.2, negotiations and reopener dates changed from 2020 to 2021, and then update all dates to reflect 2021. So that's just changing the dates in the salary articles to over to 2021. A mutual. Through previous discussions, we believe we have mutual interest in a couple of things. And the first thing is in Article 13.7.6, last year we negotiated that employees would be entitled to a 110 option as according to if applied to their stipend and sacrificing a portion of their stipend to be able to utilize that 110. I think what we're mutually looking to here is to remove the tie to the stipend and just allow employees to do the 110 option without having that tied to the stipend. And then the MOU, create an MOU possibly around the restoration of the 2013 step. Again, that depends on our conversation around COLA and market adjustments and those types of things as we move forward through this process. But again, we have interest. I think we have mutual interest in trying to do a restoration if the funding is there. Housekeeping would be to update all dates to reflect 2021 in the contract and also the MOUs. That should actually read MOAs, but through all the MOAs, update the dates and make those reflect the current change. So, and that's our proposal.
Does anybody else from the team have anything to add, or anybody from the district team have any questions? So I think you'll find that the district document is very similar. So if you pull that one up out of the file, it is titled District Initial Proposal, CSEA District Initial Proposal. And so we have a reference to Article 13.7.6, the Career Service Credit Stipend 110 option. As Paul indicated, we believe this could be of mutual interest for both parties to expand the eligibility for the 110 option to any classified employee, not just those who were eligible for the retirement stipend. So we'd want to talk through that to see if we think that's if that makes sense and what other stipulations we might attach to that. We also, think that, or we revisiting Article 19, the salary regulations. We want to explore the idea that in 19.2, employees receiving a step. We want to explore in Article 19.3.2, there's some language about previous work experience granted. And in light of some of the conversation about that we'd like to put on the table about a classified salary schedule, there might need to be a change there. Article 20, we would modify language to reflect any increase that we approve pertaining to a step and or a cost of living and or a cost of restoring the 2013 lost step and or market increases. And so any negotiation that we get there, we want to be prepared to modify the language in Article 20. And then we agree, to change that we need to change those dates from the negotiations and reopener dates changed. We'd like to look at Appendix A, the classified salary schedule. We have submitted, we've been working with a CSEA subgroup team on some proposals for classified salary schedules. And so we'd like to, work toward, we have an interest in working toward adopting a new salary schedule designed to reduce the cost of a step to approximately 1.7%, which is what the certified salary schedule adjustments made in the last couple of years have resulted in. In the memoranda of agreement space, we think that we can delete a few of these that are outdated. We think that the restoration of 2017 STEP MOA, it's been done, so we can delete that. We think that the one-time career service stipend buyout MOA was one time, so we would propose that should be deleted. There's a MOA that talks about forming a salary study review committee or a salary schedule review committee. And so depending on the outcome of our negotiations, we would propose that if it's appropriate, that might be deleted or perhaps reformed in some new capacity, but that's going to need some attention. There's a MOA titled coverage that has to do with forming a committee to look at the issue of coverage by classified employees. And so we think that needs to be revisited. We're not sure whether there's still a need for that or it needs to roll to the new year or not. The remaining MOAs that I haven't named would remain in the master agreement and, as Paul indicated, be updated for dates. But and then we have no other housekeeping or other issues to bring to the table. Does anybody from my team have anything to add, or do you have any questions? Okay, going once, going twice. All right. So where do we want to start this morning? Paul, what do you want to tackle first?
Easiest would be salaries.
Yeah, easy. I can't believe you just said that in a sentence.
Do you want to start with, do we want to start, I guess we could start maybe with that Article 13.7.6, the career service stipend, and kind of talk about pros and cons there and what sure. What our thoughts are behind that.
Yeah. And we haven't really formally declared this in the we didn't make any previous arrangements or any kind of note taking. Nicole, would you be willing to just take some notes on maybe on the agenda document, and then that'll be there. And if anybody else has notes that they want to capture.
Yes, I will absolutely do that.
Okay, so maybe at the bottom of the agenda document, just start with minutes, and just capture some notes about article. Now we do have the if you don't have an electronic version of the classified master agreement, it is loaded into our file. It's all caps. It says classified MA 2020. So if you want to pull that up, you can. And we're looking at article 13 point something. Let me find the document again.
13.7.6.
Thank you, Paul.
Do you want me to start, Mila?
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
to start? So I think the interest here is currently in order. This is kind of brand new language starting last year. And the idea or the thought process behind that is that as we have positions that are hard to fill, a 110 options allows us to tap the resources of somebody who might decide to retire or leave the district for a longer period of time. And it gives the benefit to the employee to be able to retire from the district and start drawing their para benefits and continue working with the district for a period of 110 days in one calendar year and then 110 days in the following calendar year, not to exceed the para 110 maximum days worked in a calendar year. So we believe that there's benefits on both sides of that. We believe the district is able to get the benefit of possibly having some continuation of employment for folks while we're trying to locate or find the replacement and possibly even doing some training in those areas. The other thing we believe that district could benefit from is lower salary cost. When somebody moves on, typically, especially if they're retiring, they would be at the end of the salary schedule, and we would replace that with a person who probably would not be at the end of the salary schedule. So there is some savings, some turnover savings when we replace those positions. The benefit to the employee is that they're able to draw their para retirement, whatever that percentage is, all the while they're still earning a paycheck from the district. So they're still drawing a paycheck and drawing some para retirement benefits, which might help in the transition for somebody who needs some transition time or some transition money to get to a spot where you're comfortable transitioning from current salary down to a possible reduced percentage of salary as you move over to the para system. So currently we tie that to our salary or to our career service stipend, which is the stipend that employees get after 13 years is one piece of it. And then the second would be the half stipend, and then the full stipend takes effect in the 20th year after the completion of the 20th year. And right now we have to where that's tied to that stipend, where you would opt into the 110 option, but that would cost you a reduced rate of your stipend to reduce that down to 70%. What we're looking at here is to separate the two. So employees would still be entitled to their stipend, but the 110 would no longer be tied to that. And employees who are not eligible for a stipend would also be eligible to jump in on this 110 option. So that's kind of our thought processes behind it.
And I'll add a little bit of history. Before last year, this district never allowed employees to take advantage of this 110 option. Many districts in the state do. They do allow employees to continue their employment after retirement in the same job. And some of you may be thinking, well, I know people who retired and come back to work. And what this district allowed was if you posted the position and the retiree applied and was hired back into the position, then yeah, then many times we have retirees who come back to work, and there's nothing that stops somebody right now from doing that. But what we hadn't had was the ability to just be working as a paraeducator, say, and you get to your 30th year and you're ready to retire, and you're thinking, I have one more year in me, and I would really like to start collecting my para-retirement and continue my one last year with the district. And previous boards of education had not been supportive of that, and what that would involve is just not going through an interview process, just really rolling from 1 year as a paraeducator right into the next school year as a paraeducator, same job, just a new school year, and no application. And so this is where it's different, allowing that 110, allowing that ability to just stay in the same job, not go through a hiring process, just roll from 1 year into the next year while initiating your retirement. That's what's different. And so last year we tried it for the first time, but we did tie it to this, to the stipend. And we said, listen, a person who's going to start collecting their retirement is going to essentially be earning two salaries, their district salary and their para-retirement salary. And we think that in exchange for allowing that to happen, that taking a reduced stipend would be a fair trade. And we did that for a year. We didn't have very many takers in the classified group. Maybe had a couple folks take advantage of that, if that. It's not, it's all a matter of timing. You might not be ready to do that, and you might not happen to be in the eligible for a stipend situation. And we have a lot of people who aren't eligible for the stipend but would be ready to retire and might be thinking, I have one more year in me, and I might be willing to work for one more year. And so consideration of like separating this or of expanding the eligibility so that anybody could be eligible if they're ready to retire, they could be eligible to work a 110, would seem to allow us a little bit more flexibility in retaining people. It would allow our employees certainly an option. And it would allow, there are some benefits to succession planning. When I know somebody's going to be leaving and this is their last year, and it's firm, they sign the paperwork with para, they are retired. It's a nice way for the district to benefit from a very veteran person's work for one more year. And it's a nice way for a supervisor to be able to plan for the succession to replace that employee. I think, the drawback here is that, the stipend program has existed. It is quite expensive. The district has no interest in stopping the stipend program, but tying this privilege of taking a 110 to a slight reduction in the stipend, mathematically, the employees still came out ahead. So I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about any pros and cons that people see. I would just open up the conversation to see where people are at in terms of, do you think that a global eligibility for this, no strings attached, is a good thing, and why? Or do you think it should remain somehow tied to the stipend? Or maybe should there be remaining a tie to the stipend, but anybody else could take advantage of it? Perhaps if we changed the terms of the 110 a little bit, maybe we didn't pay insurance benefits for a person who took advantage of a 110. I don't know. So there's just some ideas to throw out there, and let me stop talking and open it up for conversation.
So I guess I'll start. To me, I think this is a huge benefit, and I think it's going to have a little bit of popularity to it, especially in a time where we're kind of going through some lean times. I think it's going to look good for both the district side and the CSCA side. Paul's right. There's a benefit to it. You know, you get somebody who's a senior person who leaves maxed out, they're getting all their longevity and full benefited on the, it's advantageous for the district to, you know, they're going to come in at the middle of the scale and kind of start fresh, if you will, unless that particular employee is entrenched in the district already. So to me, I think we know we're going to have some low compensation here and whatnot. So I think it's really truly advantageous and shows some good faith on the district side. And it's really good for us to bring this forward for our classified folks.
So I'll just jump back in. One more thing that I wanted to add. This is something that we've negotiated for years, trying to get this 110. Matt, I see you shaking your head because you've seen it come across many years. But and I think that that given that 1 year of and tying that to the stipend, and I think it was successful. But I think that if we open that up to eligible for everybody, not tying to the stipend, there is a lot of hesitance around people tying things to that stipend and making that sacrifice. And I think it'll get utilized a lot more if it's not tied to that. And I think, like Rob said, if as we're in these trying times and people are having to make tough decisions, this could be one of those that helps them, that helps them through some of those decisions. So it's just another thing to say, to employees, thanks for everything you've done for us and help that transition. So.
Yeah.
And you're right, mine maybe possibly looking at a benefit of insurance, why they're doing that 110 to entice it. I don't know. But and Paul's right. We had brought this to the table years ago and did a pretty extensive study around it when we decided to bring it to the table. Because what we realized is there's a lot of other districts that had been doing it for quite some time. But with that said, I'm kind of excited about it. I have a feeling that there's going to be quite a few people that are going to take a good hard look at it. Will they utilize it? I don't know, but I think it's going to create a little bit of excitement around it.
Yeah, this is an item, again, I know we've discussed over the years, and I think it puts us in alignment with a lot of practices from surrounding districts. And having been in another district that has utilized this, I think it creates a lot of predictability for both the employee and the employer. There's a lot of mutual benefits on both sides of this with planning, preparation, transitions, and a nice benefit for the staff member who is choosing to retire, being able to withdraw their para and receive a salary at the same time. Real positive benefits all around from my point of view.
Is there any feeling or concern that it would perhaps be, I consider last year as sort of putting our toes in the water, to try something that was new for our district. We had interest in continuing to reduce costs wherever possible, and the stipend eligibility seemed one way to do that. The fact that we did that last year, and then now we're going to kind of, consider expanding the eligibility. Is there any concern about fairness or the need to kind of maintain some level of equitability from what we had last year to what we do in the future? Or how do you respond to that?
I'll start. What we were hearing last year, there were people that had an interest to it. But when they started to really crunch the numbers and do the math and talk about after taxes and whatnot, they didn't really feel it was too advantageous to go. So I think how many did you say, Milo, took advantage of this program last year?
I believe it was 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So that's kind of a good thing. You know, you didn't want to, hey, we had 100 people that did it last year.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's going to be any dissension there. But we would get calls if people would want to crunch the numbers with us and truly figure it all out. And when they leave the office or get off the phone, they're like, well, you know what? It's really, really not quite worth it after I figure out my tax bracket and taking the 30% hit on the stipend. That's why I think there's going to be some excitement around this one. I think when the people really take a hard look at it and they were on the fence of leaving or not, I think that this is going to help them make their decision. This particular program that is.
I think, you know, I struggle with that, Mila, that thought of, you know, it was different last year and now we move forward to this year. And one of the things that, you know, that comes to mind when we do stuff like that was when we changed over to the half stipend at the 13-year piece. And there was some struggle about, we had some folks that left, you know, in the 17, 18 year range and we're just hanging on for us to make that change. And it just, you know, they ultimately just retired and left before we were able to get that change accomplished. But, you know, you struggle with that thought, but then at the end of the, you know, that's what negotiations is for. And that's what, you know, brings change and we're able to, you know, to make changes starting at a starting point moving forward. And I think that, you know, for the 2 people that took advantage last year, that, you know, they might be looking back and saying, well, I'd have just held out 1 more year, but I'm not sure that makes a huge difference for somebody who's ready to go. And, you know, so I think it's one more thing that you negotiate, we set a date and we move forward from that date, and the change happens from that date moving forward. And you just, you know, as much as you want to, you just can't look back. So.
I appreciate that. And yeah, change does happen, things evolve. We always operate in good faith with the best information we have right now. And then things change, things evolve, and we go to the next step. And so, yeah, I just wanted to put it out there. So currently, when somebody comes back, some districts limit the benefit for a 110 person. They say, well, you can do the 110, but when you come back, you'll be placed, you know, as if you were a brand new employee, or we won't pay your health insurance benefits. I don't believe that the district has a strong interest in any of those measures. I think I would propose that we would maintain people at the level they would have been. I mean, somebody cannot retire and just stay working for us for another year. So I would propose that we maintain their salary at the level where it is and, you know, where it would be. And then that we would, at this point, if we're going to completely separate it and not have any kind of a stipend buy down, you know, sacrifice, then I wouldn't think we would have a sacrifice in any other area either, such as health insurance premiums or that sort of thing. So they would continue to work for the district. Now I do need to double check. Now, our health insurance plans documents do require that people be actively employed to be carried on our insurance plans, but these people would be actively employed in the 110, so never mind. Yeah, but presuming that all legalities are taken care of, I would think that we would just bring people forward in their 110 year as if they had not retired at all. Salary-wise, benefits-wise, no penalty. Do you have a response to that?
I agree. I think that that's part of the attraction to it is being able to have that as a transition piece, to be able to get to a point where, you know, maybe you're not Medicare or Medicaid eligible yet, and you're going to have to pay, you know, healthcare. So this could be a bridge to that. To that piece. So I think that's part of the attraction to the 110 is to be able to maintain current salary, current benefits, work for one more year, or basically one more school year, and get to that piece. The one thing we do, or I believe is pertinent to it, is it's got to be in somebody who's in good standing with the district. Is one of the things we said last year, and we identified. You know what I mean? So I think we probably just need to be clear about that. But other than that, I think, you know, maintaining current salary and benefits is important.
Yes, I agree, Paul. And I think that we would want to carry forward the notion that it's with supervisor approval, and that the person has a satisfactory evaluation, which is, I think, the point you're making about in good standing with the district. I could see some instances where maybe there are some reductions in the department, or, you know, there's a reason why the supervisor would not be able to extend that, you know, level of employment. Maybe something's happening, some shift, there's some reason, or the employee hasn't been performing at an adequate standard. And so we would not be compelled to offer this program to somebody who the position is going away, or their performance isn't what it needs to be, and that's been documented.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing is, though, on the supervisor piece, I would want it more than the supervisor, and more in like human resources, you know, and have it, you know, more that it's just not the supervisor making the decision, but it's, you know, because I wouldn't want to get into that piece of, you know, we've got zero documentation, we've got good evaluation, but supervisor saying, no, you know, not this guy. So, so I would want it to be more in the HR role.
Yeah, I think we could take care of some guidelines for supervisor denial, you know, based on documented performance concerns, or you know, or funding, budget issues, things like that. Yeah, we strive in all things to stay away from subjective, non-documented, you know, behavior. So
I agree.
Other team members, what else would be important to include in this consideration?
Mila, do you want to explain the 110, 110 so those that are watching might understand exactly what we're talking about?
Sure, yeah. And I think Paul hit on some of these things, but para allows for retirees to work for a para employer. So any employer, you could go to work for a public library or a school district or a different school district in Colorado. But if you are a retiree collecting your para pension and you go back to work for another para employer, you are allowed to work up to 110 days in any calendar year. So from January to December. And this gets a little, this is why we call it 110/110, because school years live in 2 different calendar years. And so a retiree would be able to come back and work for another para employer for 110 days in one school year. And then winter break comes and they could work for another 110 days in the new calendar year. And that's what's referred to as this 110/110 plan. And they can do that without jeopardizing any part of their current para retirement earnings. And what's important to note is that the district does not do any micromanaging or any tabulation. It is up to the employee to track his or her own days worked and to not get into trouble with para and to work all of that out. But, you know, just strictly speaking, if you just work fall semester for a school district, that's about 90 days. So you're not gonna jeopardize your 110. And then if you just work spring semester for a school district, you will work about another 90 days. And so then traditionally, what happens is that's your one more year worked. And then you really leave employment at the end of that spring semester and you're finished. So we do have members in our classified team here who they don't work a school year, they work 12 months. And those people require a little bit different level of calculation and agreement with their supervisor. For example, if you've got a 12-month, I don't know, what's a 12-month position?
Head custodian.
Yeah, bookkeeper. Yeah. So your school year starts on July 1st officially. And so you working from July 1st to December 31st is going to be more than 110 days. And so this is part of the calculation. And I think, Paul, this is part of the supervisor approval is like, let's just say it's Julie and she's working with her supervisor to say, I'd like to do a 110, I normally would work about 130 days, and I can only work 110. Can you do the job with me missing like about 20 days during fall semester? Can we work out a calendar that's mutually beneficial and that gets all the parts of the job truly done? If we can, then great. But sometimes we can't. Sometimes the job really needs somebody there every day, with the exception of their vacations and temp leave, and we can't. And so similarly for the spring part of your year, Julie, you start on July 1 and you work through June 30. That's the second half of your year. That's another 130 days. And so there'd have to be some ability for the organization and your supervisor to get along without you, for a fair number of days. And that's not always possible in these 12-month positions. So this 110 works most easily for people who are on like 9 or 10-month schedules. Generally, it's not, I wouldn't say we would limit it, but this is where I want to be able to have supervisor approval. Would you agree, Paul, with the spirit of that?
Yeah. Typically the conversation's been around, counting back from, December 31st, counting back 110 days and starting the 110 there, and then ending it 110 days after January 1st is typically kind of the conversation we've had in that space. But again, the supervisor's going to have to be, or the department's going to have to be okay with that and those separation periods of time.
Yeah. And in no way would I want to hamper the organization, the district, with having to get along without a crucial 12-month employee, just, so that we can allow this benefit to happen. I mean, I think everybody's interested in treating our long-term employees as well as we can and keeping them for another year. But if it comes at too much of a sacrifice, it might not work out. And so I think the 12-month employee is a really good example of that. Thanks for bringing up that point.
And is it fair to say, Mila, that, if somebody's on a 110 like that, we're planning for their transition already, there may be ways to work with the supervisor to hire that replacement, say in the springtime, do some training, transition work, and then still keep that intact and have that position start. I'm thinking of, I know office managers aren't typically or aren't always 12 months, but there could be some arrangements made like that with the supervisor to make that work out.
Yeah, I think so. I think we try to be creative when we can, and that could be a really good workaround. Lisa or Oz, do you have anything from a management point of view from the divisions you work with that pro or con on this?
No, I can see the benefit to this, especially both on the base and the nutrition side with some of our employees who've been here long term. It takes time to train someone really well to be a base director or a kitchen manager. So I do see the benefit to this. And I also like the fact that we're building in that other piece in terms of you have to be eligible to do it. So if as an employee, you've made some poor choices, then this may not be an option for you if it would be something that you would like to do. So I'm okay with it. I think it could help us in the long run, especially in those two positions.
Yeah, I kind of agree that there is, I guess, more upside than downside with this, mainly when it comes to CDL drivers and the time it takes us to train them and actually knowing how many you're going to be short going into a new school year. There's definitely some value in having that information and kind of planning around that information. So I think this is a great opportunity for those. But as really everyone has mentioned, for the 12-month staff, I think we, especially here, I mean, they're really crucial to the day-to-day and the operation. So having, I guess, an approval process for that would be ideal.
You talk about knowing and when you know, and in our current language, we established an April 1st deadline. And I would propose that we would roll forward with an April 1st deadline. If you're thinking about doing this, it's not a last minute decision. There needs to be some time to just know that the employee needs to do their own paperwork with para, but, and we need to have everything all clear by the time a new school year starts, whether it's July 1 or whether it's August 8th or whatever the start date for that employee is. And so having an April 1st deadline for application to this has been pretty useful for us. Any thoughts about that? Is that a pretty good deadline from everybody's point of view?
The only thing I was thinking, Mila, is that I was wondering if May 1st is a better date. And the reason for that is that puts us closer to the end of the previous school year. You still get the 30 days, kind of that 30-day piece depending on the calendar, but the 30 calendar days notice. And people might be in a better spot to make the decision by May 1st than they are April 1st. Because I think April 1st just gets us out of that spring break time. And I'm not sure that most people are kind of thinking about what that transition looks like until we get to that May piece. So I was wondering if May 1st might be a better date there, but I mean, it's not a major hang up for me.
I feel like that's a little late. If something goes south with this, if I'm a 12-month employee and I'm Julie and I'm talking to my supervisor and I don't really have to make up my mind until May 1st. And between my supervisor and I, we decide, this just really isn't going to work. And so Julie says, well, I'm just going to go ahead and retire and I'm not coming back. That's a pretty late resignation for us to fill. So I think I have a little concern. Nicole, you've been deep in the hiring trenches for many, many years. What do you think about deadline?
Obviously for us, the earlier the better, because right at that time, that is the April time, is our school-based budgeting. So we do that for classifieds, for certified. That's right after spring break. So knowing that we have replacement options and we have this, I do agree. I like the April timeframe because of that's right in the crux of when we are planning for especially schools. Now, of course, 12 months is a little bit different, but for schools, we're doing all of the school-based budgeting right in April. So I would tend to agree with you, Mila. Obviously, the earlier the better in this space, and that would give some planning and preparation for our staff. If someone decides, like, if it's not approved, that's the appropriate time, ideal time, if you will, for someone to say, I am going to retire, or I'm not going to do this option, whatever. But April is definitely an advantageous space to be in, if possible. So.
Nicole, I understand, and Mila, I understand the April 1st date for the budgeting, but as it stands now, if we'll pick on Julie again, if Julie was to decide to retire, she doesn't have to give a date by April 1st. She doesn't have to say, I'm going to retire and not be here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think we do often find ourselves as an organization really behind the 8 ball with people who wait until the last possible minute and tell us, at their last possible deadline. And that is always difficult, especially in the job market as it is right now. It's harder and harder to find qualified candidates out there in the job market. And so the earlier we can start looking, the better we position our buildings and our kids to have the best replacement possible. When you're out looking late and trying to find the candidate, and maybe you don't find the right candidate in your first round of interviews, you are in danger of starting the year with the position vacant, and that's not ideal. And so, I always just come at this from how do we position your colleagues and your kids to have the best possible replacement? And we do that when we have as much time as we can to find the right replacement. But you're right, Lynn, you're absolutely right. There are kind of deadlines that serve as this is the last possible minute. And there are people who wait until the last possible minute. There are also a lot of people who have huge, they understand, and they have such loyalty and such commitment to their colleagues, and they don't want to leave them high and dry. So, they are very committed to the minute I know I'm going to make this decision, I'm going to let the organization know so that they can get busy with. I think a lot of times spring break is the time when people are giving kind of, a retirement's not a small deal. And so it's a big life change. And I think these breaks tend to be times we see people making decisions over winter break. We see people making decisions over spring break. That said, if we wanted to extend it a little bit, maybe we could. But I think the earlier is the better.
Can I ask a clarification question on this? Is April, so right now, is April 1st the deadline to start having the conversations with your supervisor, or is that the date for it to be finalized and submitted to the district? So, because I think that's 2 different dates, because if it's a requirement that everything's complete by April 1st, you're having conversations with your supervisor in March. So can I get some clarification on that?
Well, right now, the way it reads is that application has to be submitted to HR. So, the conversations have been had, and your supervisor is signing off on that. Well, I don't know, the way it reads, it just says submitted to HR no later than April 1st. I think we'd want to be clear about, does that mean with the supervisor's signature on it, indicating that all the conversations have been held already? I would say that is whatever deadline we have, all the steps should have been done by that deadline. So.
And Mila, do we have to have this in a time frame too that the Board of Education can act, much like non-renewals, again, just so that we are able to give that employee notification and a guarantee back that yes, it was fully approved, or because I know that not only does the employer need that planning, that ability to hire, but I think the employee would also want confirmation sooner than later, so that that may or may not impact the decision whether they choose to work one more year, regardless of the 110, or if they are just going to go ahead and retire.
Yeah, the Board of Ed, you're right, Matt. The Board of Ed does need to act on all hires, resignations, terminations, and before they are really official. We usually proceed knowing that they will be approved, counting on them to be approved, as long as there are no extenuating circumstances. But you're right, it's not official until the board has acted on it.
What if we split the difference and do a 4/15? That'd be middle of the month. That gives us a little bit of time in April, the beginning of April, for those conversations to happen after spring break, depending on the calendar, whenever spring break falls. But that gives a little bit of time for that conversation to happen between supervisor and an employee, and then by the middle of April, then they have to have that decision made and turned into HR. Does that work?
I think we could make, Nicole, I'll look to you. You've really worked more in the processing part about the house here, but I think we could probably try it. And if it doesn't work, come back to the table next year to amend that.
I don't see a significant difference in the processing piece from April 1st to April 15th.
Thank you.
Okay, split the difference. All right. What else? What other considerations would be important to get on the table here?
I think we've covered it. We've had some pretty good conversations on both sides.
So what I would suggest is that we, I would suggest that we go away and I come back like with a draft language document, and in the next round of our next session, and then that we take a look at that, noodle through any little edits or changes, and then reach a tentative agreement on that. Is that acceptable to you guys? Okay, great. Okay, so with the notes that we've taken and the general concepts we've discussed, which I'll work on incorporating all of that into a document. Paul, I think I'll share it with you in advance just so you can see it. And then we'll be ready to firm it up at next week's session.
Sounds great.
Okay. I think maybe we should take a break right now. We've been together for an hour and 10, which is not the longest time ever, but why don't we take a, what do you say, a 10-minute break, come back at 9:20, and then we'll do that. So Roddy, can you put up a break screen for us, please?
I did not prepare for a break screen, but I will put up the "it'll begin shortly again" screen.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, sir. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Mala.
So do you want to talk about like the process and the committees and the 3 versions and all of that?
Yep. Yep, and I'll even let you know the ones that we're leaning towards so far.
Great. Yeah, so I think just giving like the public sort of like we've been talking about this for a couple of years. We've had this committee. Here's the work, yeah.
Yep. I'll even talk about how we came to do our current salary schedule. So kind of a historical march.
History would be good, yeah. Roddy, does that mean we're live again?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. How many viewers do we have right now, sir?
$25.
Okay, hello out there. All right. Okay, we're back. So moving down our agenda, Mr. Williams, where would you like to go now?
I think let's, I guess we'll just go straight down the list. So we've got, we could do salary schedule, and we'll kind of talk through salary schedules, where we're at, what that looks like, the reasoning, and those types of things. And I think maybe we'll, for benefit of our 25 listeners and Oz and anybody else who's new, we'll kind of start a historical piece of the current salary schedule, and then kind of walk through on where we're at now and what the work that we've done so far this year. So historically, back in, I'm going to say probably early 2000s, we had a salary matrix that was very different in the steps and the lane, or the steps and the levels. There was no rhyme or reason to them. They were very kind of scattered on the percentage between a step or percentage between a level. There was no consistency moving any of those. So in the early 2000s, we had some extra money at the negotiating table that year, and we said, let's work on the salary schedule and come up with a new matrix that is more consistent and aligns with kind of our thinking at the time. And that led us to what's called a 4x4 matrix, but basically it's 4% between each step and 4% between each level. And that salary schedule worked well during those times, during the times of the early 2000s, up until we got into the slower times around the 2008 to 2010, 11, those times, and we really struggled as a system to be able to continue to give full steps and also a cost of living. And we have approximately, and this varies from year to year, but approximately 50% of our folks are maxed out on the salary schedule, and about 50% of folks are currently moving through the salary schedule at any one time. So, and with turnover, it continues to have kind of that effect to where we're somewhere in that 50-50 range. And like I said, it can vary from year to year, up to probably 10% on either side. But however, we have large numbers of folks still moving through the schedule, and we have large numbers of folks who are maxed out on the schedule. So an interest, I think, to both the district and the association is that we need to consistently give the steps that we've committed to in the agreement, and that needs to happen on an annual basis. It doesn't feel good when we have to negotiate away from that, and it doesn't feel good to the person who has been counting on that step all year to get to the November timeframe when we're negotiating, and to tell that person that, hey, just kidding, you're not getting your step until July, or this year we're only able to do a half a step, or those times where we had to get creative in 2013 and 17 and not give a step at all. So that doesn't feel good to folks, and I feel like that's a thing that we need to be able to go to our people and say, hey, this is what negotiated for you. This is what the district can afford year in and year out. And that we need, and we want to be consistent with being able to offer those steps and not have to get into a situation every year where we're making decisions on whether we're doing a cost of living raise, or a step or both, or something in between. So and it also doesn't feel good to folks who are on the maxed out side of the salary schedule, and all the additional funding or all the additional money goes into the steps, and the people who are at the end or maxed out get nothing as part of an increase for that year. So we need to figure out something that allows us to continually give some type of increase to both the folks that are moving the steps and the folks that are maxed out on the schedule, because it's just really not. I don't feel like that's great for morale to one, tell people you're not getting your step, or B, we're only going to give you a half step this year, so we can do some type of cost of living, and it's not working well. So in the interest of that, we agreed as the association and the district last year to put together a committee and kind of look at some different salary schedule models on what that would look like. And in order to do that, really it's spreading that out. It's lowering the step cost, lowering the step percentage, and spreading it out, making more steps. So instead of 11 steps, you might have somewhere around 15, 16, or 17 steps, something along those lines. So to spread that out, to lower that step cost, to spread the money more equally. The other thing is our certified group currently, I believe they're at a 1.7, Mila, right? Is that the latest I'm aware of? So it also kind of aligns us a little bit closer to our certified group that have the 1.7% steps. So we formed the committee. We've been working with the committee. We've done some things. Darren, who puts this together and works extremely hard, he put together 3 different models that we've kind of been navigating through and working through. But currently, I think as of right now, Mila, I think the preferred one coming back from the group is that number 2 or number 3 salary schedule. I think number 2 is kind of just slightly in the lead, but that's kind of the thought process of the group right now. We plan to have another meeting kind of next week to just go a little bit farther deeper into it to kind of see how that looks. But anyways, that number 2 or number 3 on those is kind of what the committee's coming back with right now. And yeah, so hopefully I gave a pretty decent explanation of where we're at, where we came from, and why we're trying to get in this new direction. But the bottom line is that a 4x4 matrix, a 4% matrix across the step, I feel like that was affordable back in the early 2000s. I just don't feel like that's affordable and sustainable long term, moving forward in the world of education right now and school district funding that we are faced with currently in current structure. So.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I would. I think you gave good history as I understand it. Thank you. And yeah, we share that interest in being able to keep the promise of a step every year. It feels terrible to the district in years where we haven't been able to afford a step at all. And so you see, last year, the restoration of the 2017 lost step. You see this year on the agenda consideration of the restoration of restoring the 2013 lost step. It's hard to go back and repay something later. It's not like there's a whole lot of extra money later down the road usually, but we just always feel like it's a bit of a broken promise. And so we want, I think from the district's point of view, our interest is certainly to have a salary schedule that more closely matches what's going on in the certified salary schedule, so that our pattern of bargaining, where we treat different employee groups equitably, can be maintained. And if the certified salary schedule that was designed a couple years ago and put into place, like Paul said, does have an average cost of step of about 1.7%. And so if we can, this is what we drafted and shared with the committee, were some versions that have an average salary increase of about 1.7%. Now that doesn't mean that everybody in the group gets a 1.7% raise when they get a step. Those who are getting steps get a higher percentage, but there are many people, like Paul said, in the group who are maxed and don't get a step at all. So the average cost of step then comes out to be about 1.7. So I wonder, Paul, if we want to just walk through maybe number 2 or number 3 with the group, just so that everybody's very familiar with the features of those, and then we can have any conversation that we need to have in that space. Does that sound good?
Yep, sounds great. And let me pull it up real quick.
So it's in the shared drive in a folder called New Salary Schedule Info. And if you open that folder and look for classified salary option number 2, shall we just take a look at that one?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody there? Do you all have it?
So, I'll just walk through a couple of the things that were important on the committee. One is that nobody loses current money, so that everybody's moving over to the new salary schedule. It was important to the committee that nobody goes backwards from that. So if you're, if you're making, just throw something out there. If you're making $15 an hour, you would go over to the new salary schedule, making a minimum of $15 an hour. So that was important to us, is that nobody would lose money. And I think we throw that out there because I think, just announcing this to everybody that we're negotiating a new salary schedule. I don't want that fear factor of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose money. We don't want people to lose money. So, whatever salary spot you're at, that's where you're, you won't go below that moving over. So then salary option number 2, just some high level examples. It's a 19.5% range, meaning that across from start to finish, you're about 19.5%. You have about 70-cent midpoint increment between grades. So between each one of the things, there's about 70 cents on average. Minimum hourly rate increase. That means the minimum wage, or what we call our minimum wage for the district, would go from $12.28 to $12.40. The one-time cost to move would cost the district about $747,000. It's 996, but so basically 747. Average increase would be somewhere around the 324.24. Increase range would be basically from $2.28 to, or $2.28 to 1,626. And then the 2021 step average cost would be about 1.76. And then the average increase is about $522.60. Increase range from 0 to 1,913. So those are high level, and it's difficult to understand like what each one of those means until you like dive into the schedule and start taking a huge look. But basically that's a overview, kind of high level talking points.
Paul, what as you and the committee think about number 2 or option number 3, what do you think is going to weigh your decision, or what questions or conversation do we need to have in that space? Or is it just time to know the options a little bit better? Yeah. Do you have a sense of what's going to guide you?
Yeah, that's exactly it, digging deep, going deeper into it. So So initially, when we first initially looked at them, it was, kind of taking a look at each one of these high level things for each one of them, 1, 2, and 3, and then kind of taking a long distance look at what does this look like when you kind of put our matrix on top of it, and that type of thing. And then now it will be just getting in deeper to find out, okay, how does this look in not each one of the cells, because it's impossible to look at each one, but how does this look when you go into the cells, and what's some examples and those types of things. So that's our goal for our next meeting, is to dig deep, but high level, long distance look. People are tending to look towards that option. I'd say option 2 is slightly leading, but option 2 and 3. The one is the one-time cost move on option 1. Some of the things that were kind of stood out on that option 1 that were not as attractive as the one-time cost move of the $819,000. Felt like that's putting a lot of money towards that, and could possibly be taking money out of trying to do some type of other stuff like a cost of living or that type of thing. There were some line items on there that were close to or even I would say close to a flat change, if not even, like, I don't want to say a negative, because it's like a -0.
Yeah, there are no negatives. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was like close to that. So option 2 and 3 don't have those. They're more around a consistent, positive. So.
Oh yeah, you're talking about that. There were like 2 ranges where the midpoint went down by like a nickel or something an hour. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So
that was in option 1, right?
Yeah. And 2 and 3 didn't have those, so that was important to folks, is not to lose that midpoint. And it was more around the value of the position and the attraction. Midpoint is kind of where we have people come into positions if they come with outside experience. So people are concerned about not losing the attraction, or gaining as much attraction as you can to those positions, in those 2 realms. So anyways, that was kind of the thought around option 1, and why people kind of tend to lean more towards that option 2 and 3. As we dig deeper, that could change, and people could be swayed more or back to option 1 as you get into it deeper. But right now, it seems like people are kind of leaning towards that 2 and 3.
I wonder if it would be okay if I just shared my screen with one of the schedules on it and just walked through some of the fields and some of the attributes of the schedule as I understand them, as we designed and suggested and talked about this with the committee. Would that be helpful to people, do you think? Has your team really looked at the schedule deeply, or just I'm sure they have, but I guess I don't want to assume that everybody's seeing the same things that, for example, I see. So I'll beg your indulgence, and I'll share here for a second. And
I like it.
Okay. Are you seeing the salary?
We are.
Schedule? Okay. All right. So this is number 2, and so just for people who are watching or seeing it for the first time, these blue numbers out to the left are just like a quick reference guide that just tell you what the minimum salary is, the midpoint salary, and the new maximum salary. And you'll see we've renamed the ranges. We would now have a range 1 or a grade 1, and we would go all the way up through grade 30. And so every job, will get renamed, and that'll be part of the process. You'll see here in this kind of turquoise band that the step sizes vary, and there was some intentional design here to say, listen, when you're moving from step 1, your entry salary with the district, up to step 2, let's make that raise be as big as we can to kind of attract and retain folks. So let's see if we can have it be a 3.25% for these first 3 years of employment. And then it drops to a 3%, and it continues to drop as you're with us, ending in your last 4 years with us. The percent of your step is only 1.75%. You're earning higher dollars, so that percentage, dollar to dollar is still, a fair amount of money, but it's not as high a percent as early on. And the intention there was get people in, get them paid as much as we can, as quickly as we are able to. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where nowhere here do you see like a 1.7% overall step cost, but we can afford to do these steps because about half of our people don't earn a step, they're maxed. One of the other things that you talked about, Paul, was, the fact that we have an 11-step system right now. People get to their max earnings at 11. This has to be more steps in order to make the math work. And all of these feature a 17-year step. And I think there are some advantages to that. Right now, when someone comes in and joins the organization, they'll earn steps. Let's say that they're an experienced candidate and they come in and we place them close to the midpoint. Currently, we'll give them 5 years of service credit, and we'll place them at step 6. And currently, they would receive a step for their sixth year to their 7th, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, so they'll receive 5 years of step increases to step 11, and then they stall. They get no more step increases until you get to the longevity payments that start at year 10. So you got 5 years of step increases currently, and then you've got 5 years of just stalling. And this is for someone with experience. It's more than that if you don't have any experience and you come in earlier on the schedule. But in this new version, in all the new versions, if we did a similar come in at about the midpoint, let's just say you came in at step 7 in a new system, you would earn a step increase for 10 years. You would earn step 7, step 8, all the way up through step 17. You'd be getting step increases. And then your 10th year, you're eligible for the longevity payments. And so there's never a year when you're not getting some kind of either a step increase, or then you start getting the benefit of the longevity. So I think that's an interesting point to note. Although it is more steps to max earnings, it does ensure that people continue to climb and to grow. I think the other thing that all of these 3 options do is present a wider range. So this 19.5% means that there's the value of the minimum, $12.40 an hour, up to the midpoint is 19.5%. From the midpoint up to the maximum is 19.5%. Our current salary schedule doesn't have such a wide range. And so these maximums are currently higher than our current maximums. And that is shown over here on the far right in red. So I'll take you over to those red numbers. Right now, grade 11 is our lowest grade, and its maximum step 11 hourly rate is $18.19 an hour. We believe that grade 11 would be equate to grade 1 in the new system. And that's a max of $18.40. So people in this range now have a much higher earning to look forward to. Yes, it'll take them a little longer to get there, but it's a much higher earning. It's 1.05% higher than, which is that number. That's the midpoint increase, but it's a higher number to aim for. So let me pause there and just see if there are any questions so far. I'll go over a few other features of the schedule too, but any questions?
So the only thing I would add on there, Mila, couple other thoughts, is when you look at, so when you go to step 11, And you start, step 11 kind of drops down to that 2.25%. So if somebody starts brand new into the system, and they come with no previous work experience, by the time they get to step 11, they do start earning longevity. So they might get a smaller percentage on the step increase, but that's the year that longevity starts as well. So that would help offset that. And then the other piece to notice is, which was helpful, I think, for the group as well, was, the 3.25% on $12.80 is not the same as $12.50 on 1606. So it takes a larger percentage to get cents or money on $12.80 than it does a smaller percentage on a larger dollar amount. So by the time you average those out, the increases kind of are a little bit more equal than they are if you just take a look at the percentage.
Yeah, dollar wise, they're more similar than percent wise. Yeah. Yeah. So you'll see in the yellow column, you'll see how the current grades map onto the new grades. I told you that, we're going to have grades 1 through 30. Those are going to be the names of our new salary ranges. And right now, we don't have a grade 1. We start with grade 11. So what you see here then in the yellow column shows you how the mapping works. We think that grade 11s with their current midpoint of 1524 most closely match to the new grade 1, and its midpoint is 1540. So you can see that that's higher. You're going to be grade 11s will benefit from being in this grade 1. And that's why it's going to cost $700,000 or $800,000 to map people on to this salary schedule, because generally speaking, people will be earning more, slightly more. In some cases, it's almost just the same, but in many cases, it might be as much as maybe $1,500 or $1,600 annually more. So grade 12, you can see maps to grade 2 all the way down. You see this blank spot here next to grade 11. The midpoint for the old grade 20 most closely maps to the new grade 10. And then the midpoint for the old grade 21 most closely maps to the new grade 12. Nothing really maps to the new grade 11, but that's okay. And at some point in the future, if the market tells us that we have a job that really maps closely to this new grade 11, we'll be able to slot jobs into that grade. No harm to have it sit vacant right now. In our current schedule, we do have some grades that are empty, that don't have any jobs assigned to those grades, and that's okay. So you'll see that's what the empty yellows mean is there's not really a match. So if you're wondering what your salary would be, if you are currently a grade 26 and you're currently at step 11 or earning the max, let's just say you're currently at step 11 earning this 3277 number in red. The rules for moving people onto the new schedule, at least as we have them proposed, would be, okay, you're currently earning 3277 an hour. So let's make sure that you don't have any harm done to you. So let me see, what's the dollar amount in this new grade 19 that most closely compares to 3277? Well, 15 is 3231, but that would harm you. You would lose a little bit of money. So we have to go to the next higher dollar amount. So you're going to get an 11 cent an hour raise just for getting transferred onto this new salary schedule. And so that's where the cost comes from. That's that $700,000 or $800,000. These people, and then these people are no longer maxed and they're not stalled at the max. Next year, they're going to get another step and they're going to move up to 3345. And then they hit the max. But that's how it would work. And if you're somewhere lower, then you just look for the the box on your new grade at the closest hourly dollar value. Paul, what would you add to that?
That's exactly it. You know, like I said at the beginning, it was important for us that nobody was going to lose money. It was important for us that everybody was going to come over to the new salary schedule with some type of movement. And you know, the other piece that seems to be important is that the positions aren't losing value, or, you know, I mean, they're gaining more value at the midpoint, trying to keep those as attractive as possible. So that was important for folks, but yeah, just like you explained it, I think that's great. Great explanation there.
And I would just add the last number that you see over here in this far right-hand gray or brown box. You've got the red numbers, and those are your current maximums, your current step 11 hourly wages. The black number is the difference, the increase to midpoint. And you heard Paul and I talking a little bit earlier. Option 1 did have, I think, 2 grades where the way the math works, the midpoint wasn't more, it was slightly less. And so I think, Paul, what you described as one of the factors that sways you is that if you look at all these black numbers in that far column, none of them are negative. The midpoint is always, like, for example, on the new grade 10, the midpoint doesn't change. There's no difference. It's a 0. But you don't see any negative numbers here. And in some places, the midpoint changes by as much as like 2.04 or 2.08% in like grades 4 and 5, new grades 4 and 5. Similarly, grade 19 sees a big jump of 2%. So I think those are the features. I can show you number 3 if you'd like to see it. Just briefly, let's look at it.
And I think one thing important to note is, you know, with this, anytime we change the max, or anytime we do a cost of living, you know, so when we start applying dollars and saying, hey, we need to make the salary schedule more affordable or more equitable to where we can continue to do dollars for both people moving through the steps, and then also apply dollars towards cost of living. And anytime we increase the cost of living, that's increasing this matrix, whatever matrix we're on. We're increasing that matrix. That's increasing people's earning potential, so or career earnings. So I think that's important to know, is that you know, those are important factors that we take into consideration as we're looking at these as well.
Yeah. Right. Another way to say that is if there's a COLA, a step is a step, and that costs a certain amount of money. But the COLA, so a step will move you inside of this existing schedule. The COLA actually changes the values in this schedule. It takes all the minimums and increases them by that COLA percent. It takes all the values in this blue table and moves them by whatever percent the COLA is. And so that raises your minimums and your maximum values and your midpoint values. So this one, similarly, I think if you look down at like what's happening to the values of midpoints, you see many that are in like the high, almost to 2% midpoint increases, 1.89, 1.96, 1.81. You see a lot more of them with a lot higher increase to midpoint. So that's certainly one of the essential differences. This one has a 72-cent increment. So the difference between the midpoint at grade 1 is $15.30. It's 72 cents up to the next midpoint, $16.02. 72 cents up to the next midpoint, $16.74. So that's what that means. So that's the largest sort of increase between grades of the options that we've constructed. This one costs the least to put people on, but it is the most, well, it's not the most expensive. Option 2, the last one, is a 1.76 average cost of steps. So option 2 is the most expensive to maintain over time. But we're only talking about 0.05 of a percent. So it's not enormous money as far as the difference goes. Any questions from the group, from the team? Or you tracking along with what we've got here? This one has the narrowest range, and once again, it's not very different, but 19% is the difference between your minimum and your midpoint, and then 19% from the midpoint to the maximum. So relatively speaking, option 1 had a 40% from min to max range. This one only has a 38%, but once again, not huge differences. It's really hard to make the numbers work. This is why all the options are so similar, because you can do different things if you add many more steps. And for example, the certified salary schedule has 30 or 40, or I think it's 30 steps. I should know this, but yeah, it's like 30. I think CSEA was not interested in having 30 steps to maximum earnings, right, Paul?
Correct. Yeah, we don't, you know, by the time we get to 10 years, 15 years, you know, we have a lot of employees who drop off at that point. We don't have the life expectancy that certified does, I think, through our salary schedule. So yeah, so it's important for us to give people the opportunity to get to the max as soon as possible.
Yeah. So when you put some of those parameters in place, then the options just don't look very different.
Yeah, one more time, I just want to shout out to Darren for all his hard work in this. I know he put a lot.
Darren Everett is our compensation administrator, and yeah, he does a really good job at understanding compensation structures and working with your team and trying to take your wishes and turning them into a really beautiful spreadsheet. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here. If I can figure out how to do that. Well. Roddy, how can I'm not seeing the stop sharing button. Did I stop? I don't think I did. All right, that's better. Thank you. Couldn't see that choice on my screen. All right. So it sounds like in terms of process, there's really some more thinking to be done and some more conversation to be had about really which of those schedules you want to pursue. Are we in a position of saying that yes, one of these schedules is the direction we need to go? Do you have you heard, or do you have any requests to like change any of the parameters or rework something?
No, no. The only thing that initially was in option 1, if we were to change those two negatives, make those two negatives over into the positive range, I think that one becomes, I think that becomes the leader at that point, for whatever reason. But other than that, I think, you know, people are leaning in that option 2, 3 piece. And yeah, and I haven't, you know, nobody's came back and said, you know, hey, I just really don't think any one of these 3 are going to work. You know, and ultimately it's not like, you know, we're not doing backflips over it. It's not like we're, you know what I mean? Like we're like, yay, let's change our salary schedule. But I think it's a realistic reflection of where we're at right now, and being able to continue to be able to continue and answer to 1,800 people, or approximately, you know, the number of folks we have in our bargaining unit. But to continue to have the conversation with 1,800 people that we have best interest of everyone, and salary increases. I think that it's work that's going to have to be done. You know, so I don't want to send the message that we're like, you know, super excited about a change in a matrix. However, you know, we also have to be realistic and recognize that we have, you know, a number of folks that we need to negotiate for, and at the end of the day, you know, I think this will get us there.
Okay. Paul, are you interested in having Darren recalculate number 1 with, I don't know what he can do to I think you've spoken to him about trying to change those midpoint negatives.
Yeah, he was gonna change those and send it off to me.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet, but that, I mean, you know,
Okay.
he'll send it to me.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. All right.
So then, I think on that piece, Milo, you know, our plan is to meet this week, or I guess we're Friday, so next week, and then I'm hoping that we are able to come to our next negotiating session and say, you know, hey, this is what we're leaning to, and you know, have and maybe either a recommendation or an almost recommendation for this group.
Okay. And then what I would propose to have would be the dollar figures for, you know, your overall salary, what we've spent to date on market adjustments, what the cost of you know, several different COLA percentages would be, what the cost of step would be, and in getting it narrowed down to 1 or 2 models is one model is preferable, so that we can just cost it out and have a more exact number to look at, so that we can just look at the true dollars in this financial consideration, so we could get to the compensation portion of our conversation with that then. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I think the other thing that I alluded to in our district initial proposal was the idea that we would consider changing the language in that Article 19.3.2, which talks about the previous work experience granted. And as I was walking people through the schedule, I think I mentioned that we currently bring people in at close to midpoint. Do you want to consider an adjustment to that language to give more years of service credit and allow, or do you still want to have people come in at 5 years of service credit onto step 6 and have that be the cap? Or do you want to consider moving it up toward the midpoint? What do you think?
I think it's important to move those up to midpoint. You know, I get concerned, especially in some of our hard to fill positions, that we would be, if you're coming in at step 6, we already have, I think, a difficult time filling some of those positions at the current, you know, bringing those guys in at midpoint. I would hate to make this change and lower that, you know, technically it's not lowering it because it's step 6, but lowering the dollar amount that they can come into, and make that even more difficult. especially I think that would have huge effects on our trade positions. And some of those positions where we try and recruit folks with some previous work experience. So I think if we can look at that, make that adjustment, and have those people come in somewhere around that midpoint still, then I think that's helpful to both sides.
Okay, that's another reason for picking one, because I think depending on, I think speaking on behalf of the district, we have an interest in not placing people higher than the midpoint.
Yeah.
And so
we do too.
Okay, so then I think that and I think the reason behind that, just to be transparent, would be we want to honor our current employees to the greatest extent possible. And although we value external experience, and sometimes people bring really great skills to our system, we also don't want brand new people to the district to just leapfrog over people who've worked here for many years. And so, if you're a rookie and you just started here and you've only had 1 or 2 years of experience in your job, that's one thing. A very experienced person from the outside might come in and be placed a little bit higher than you. But generally speaking, I think if we hold at midpoint and don't place any higher, we honor our existing people a little bit better. Is that what you all think?
That's exactly our thoughts too. If you still have somebody who comes in there and they're, they've got 4 or 5 years working in the district, but they've had no previous work experience. You could have somebody who comes with outside experience, with 10 to 15 years of outside experience and comes over, and they're going to come in, a little bit higher. But yeah, I agree. I don't like the large leapfroggings and those types of things with outside candidates to internal candidates. But
yeah.
So I think midpoint, having the cap at midpoint, I think is appropriate.
Okay, so that could be, allowing 6 years of previous service and a placement at step 7. It could be 7 years of previous service and a placement at step 8. It kind of depends on which option you choose. So we'll have to noodle through that as one of our agenda items for next time, is a corresponding adjustment to that language.
The other thing I thought too, Mila, depending on the matrix we set on, we could even do we could even do 1 step for every, let me see what it was I was thinking, 2 steps for every year previous year. Because my fear is that right now, currently, if somebody comes to us with 5 years previous work experience, which in a lot of our trade folks, that would put them at the master status, for those that have certifications, and get them into that, that kind of position. That's somewhere around that 5-year piece. So, and if we're not pulling those folks in somewhere around midpoint, I just have that fear that we're not going to be able to capture those guys. That it's just, that decision to leave wherever they're at, making the money that they're currently making, either in outside sector or another district, would be a difficult decision, more difficult if that, I always say the light at the end of the tunnel, if that is too far away, I feel like that might hurt us being able to fill some of those positions. So, so I thought about possibly even, and we don't have to discuss it now, but I'm just throwing it out there for everybody to kind of think about, is depending on the salary schedule to go to, is maybe two steps for every previous year work, external work experience, for a maximum of, midpoint, or, and that, again, that step's going to depend on, the salary schedule for which we choose. The thought in my mind that kind of pushes back on me on that thought a little bit is then we would have the internal candidate who says, well, wait a minute, for every year experience, for every year that I work here and get this experience, you're only giving me 1 year. So, and there's some great thought to that argument. So, so anyways, I just wanted to put that out there and kind have people give some thought around that and think about that. And we can probably talk about that next week. But I just want to put it on the table.
Yeah, I think my immediate response to that would be, I absolutely agree that some of your industry, like certified professionals that you're talking about, who 5 years in, they're achieving sort of a master status. But I think, Paul, they're kind of taken care of with the fact that they're eligible for like a higher grade job. They're usually eligible for like a master mechanic, for example. And so they're going to get taken care of because the grade of that job is higher than the grade of an entry level mechanic, for example. And so we're not giving them the year for year service experience, but we are giving them a higher grade to recognize and honor that they've reached this master status. And so I think they're kind of taken care of. And I definitely agree with the inequality of how do we honor an outside person's experience at a two for, double somebody who's been here working along all those years. I think that would be a bitter pill to swallow. But yeah, I wonder if anybody else has any perspectives for all of us to just be mulling over in this week to come.
The only thing I would say is for some of these trade positions, we bring them in at midpoint and that's truly not their market. So I think that's why we have a hard time recruiting. I mean, I know like HVAC has a difficult time, electrical. I'm sure maybe some of your master mechanics. A lot of these positions are posted as masters because once a master leaves, they want to replace an individual with that high quality experience. The trades do have a career ladder, but very seldom do they want to bring somebody in at an entry level. In the HVAC department, they've been kind of doing that because they keep posting out and not being able to fill the position with what they're truly looking for. So, and we've had a little bit of conversation, I know, about some of the difficulty type positions that we can't recruit in. And I don't know if that could look differently, if there could be some language that can be applied to specialty type situations. I don't know, and I haven't talked to the team about that. I just know that there's been conversation a few years with the district over some of these problem areas. But then on the flip side, you're right. When you have somebody who's been entrenched, who has a potential to be leapfrogged by a new hire, that's a tough situation too. Some of these trades, though, you need to look at the expertise and the experience that they're bringing in. Otherwise, what's going to happen is because of the market so high out there for these positions, they're getting paid so well, we're going to start to slope off bringing in qualified personnel to fit some of these positions. Just food for thought.
I think that's the purpose for our market-based salary approach, which is to say we do those annual market analyses using OHM's consulting services to look at the market and to say, what are other positions in the metro area, either in government, municipal organizations or other school districts paying? And so, for example, mechanics, let's look at other mechanics around and see what they're paying. And for those who don't know, we look at the midpoint of what other organizations are paying and we compare it to our midpoint. These new salary schedules are going to help us because, as you guys know, sometimes you have employees that come to you and they go, hey, Aurora is paying a whole lot more. And what they're looking at is the maximum salary. And our maximum salaries haven't been that high. The middle point salary compares, but the maximums, and that's what people were looking at, is like, what's my maximum earnings? So these new salary schedules do help us a little bit in that space. People look at the range and they just go to the maximum, they're going to see a more competitive looking salary. But we always compare middle to middle and find that that's a valid comparison. And I know sometimes you guys have wondered, like, how fresh is that data? And we can always go back and dig and probe and ask, but we try to keep those market comparisons, Rob, so that we're within 5% of what anybody else is paying. And you're right, it gets hard. Some of these positions are very competitive.
So good stuff to chew on, I think, for the week.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, anybody else have questions, comments, anything else that they want to throw in on the subject of salary schedules, or market-based? Okay, so I think the other things on our to-do list have to do with some of the MOAs. I think any conversation about a step needs to come next week when we've got some dollars in front of us. Would you agree?
Yep.
Yeah,
the compensation, I think, all plays into salary schedule, that whole piece. I think that whole conversation kind of ties in together.
Right. So we've got some time this morning left. I don't know, do you want to look at a couple of MOAs? Do you want to take a little bit of a break? What would your preference be right now?
It's 10:15. Do you want to take another 10-minute real quick, and then let me touch base with my folks on the MOAs, make sure we're where we, and then we regroup in 10 minutes.
Let's make it 10:30. Let's give 15 minutes for that. And Roddy, could you put the screen up till 10:30? Okay. See you in a few.
Thanks, guys.
Do you need us back sooner, Mila?
I don't think so. I think we're okay. So
Thank you.
10:30.
Hey, Mila.
Yep.
These meetings will still exist on YouTube, right? So if somebody wants to watch it later, they can just go and pull it up on YouTube.
I think so. Roddy, how long I think they stay for a long time, don't they?
These are uploaded straight to YouTube. They will stay there for the life of our account with YouTube. So as long as YouTube still exists. I also want to make mention that when I do put up this slide, we are still live recording. That's
Okay.
not pause stop. So we are still live throughout this entire thing. All your content is still there.
Thanks, Roddy. Okay, are people ready to come back?
I think we're slowly getting there.
Okay, we'll give it a minute. Thank you, Nicole, for being our note taker. The team can find those notes on the bottom of our agenda. So if you have any questions or corrections or additions, type them in there. Okay, are you ready to look at some memorandum of agreement?
We are.
Okay. So I guess we would look at the ones that we're proposing any significant change to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, or have dates.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're going to look at date changes, then I guess we just start at the beginning.
That's
Okay.
That's our fun time, is just going through the MOAs.
It's housekeeping. All right. So the first one is the shared decision making, right?
Yep.
All right. And I didn't hear interest from either side in doing anything other than simply updating the date from 2020 to the year 2021.
Agreed.
Okay. Everybody looking at the shared decision-making one? Anybody else have any comments? You're gonna give us some thumbs on that? Are you good to change that? Just roll it over, change the date. Okay, so that's shared decision-making. Julie, did I miss your thumb? Is it below the camera? Okay, thanks. Next one is career development. This has to do with establishing career ladders and multi-skill positions. Is that still good to roll forward with just a date change? I'm okay with that. Okay. The third one is student transition and school to work or career. And so we have pre-COVID and hopefully again someday post-COVID, set aside some funding and establish this program to have some students on IEPs identified by student services, and they work in transition positions around the district. Some of them here in the ESC, some of them out in schools, I think. Is this an MOA that wants to roll forward unchanged except for the date? Matt, the electronic thumb. Excellent. Lisa, do we have your thumb? Okay, thanks. All right. Nutrition services benefits. So that's the MOA that talks about needing 25 hours in order to qualify for benefits, which is different than anywhere else in the agenda. Oh, and now Paul's the thumbs up. Let me see your thumbs, electronically or otherwise. Nice. Okay, very good. Thank you.
That's such a trendsetter.
Really a trendsetter. Uh-huh. Student staff ratio. That's any comment or any concern about rolling that forward? Are you supportive of rolling that forward as is? Unchanged. Okay, thank you. School and department manuals or handbooks, the idea that everybody should have one and share it. Okay. This is a relatively new one, collaborative time for special needs and special education paraprofessionals. Just calling out the benefit of collaborative time. Are we good rolling that forward? Okay. Also a relatively new one, the premium pay for required Spanish language interpretation skills. So a keyword there, required. We did expand that a little bit last year. And is that good to roll forward for this year as is?
Real quick comment on that. I'm good to roll it forward, but I just want to say that I still think this was a great addition to the contract to do that. And I feel like that people are really taking advantage of that. And yeah, so that was a long time coming, and I think it's worked well.
Yeah, I think it can be a real value add, and not every position really requires it or uses it. So just having a Spanish language ability isn't necessarily, the whole thing, but it's when it is needed, especially in public facing positions, it's nice to be able to recognize it and honor it with some incentive pay or some additional pay. Orientation time for 9-month school employees. You good to roll that forward as is? Okay. All right, and then to the proposal that I had that we can eliminate the restoration of the 2017 step, that's been done. It's incorporated into people's pay. Can we delete that one? Are you supportive of that? Okay, so we will delete that. The one-time career service credit stipend buyout. This was created last year. It was intended to buy down folks who were using the stipend. It was intended to use some one-time money that came as a result of the most recent mill levy election and the ability to use some one-time money, and that's why it was a one-time only offer. So at this point, that money doesn't exist in the budget, and so I would propose that this needs to be deleted. Is there support for that? Okay, we will delete that one. And then the MOA titled coverage, which talks about classified employees providing coverage for other positions due to absences or unfilled vacancies may have implications on the workforce. We agree to engage in conversation with the intention to address and provide solutions for these implications during the 2020 contract year. I don't believe that there was much conversation during the 2020 contract year on that topic. And I think it's largely because COVID happened and everything went south in March.
That's exactly right. Chrissy Riccio and I started some conversation on that, but that quickly got pushed to the side when COVID started and we started talking about going out in the March timeframe. So this is one of those things, like we talked about at the beginning, of trying to make decisions long-term for a contract when we're in these times right now, and having great examples or good talking points, because, everything, basically our contract runs January 1 to December 31st. And so the majority of our time, I'm pretty sure that's over 75% of our year was spent in COVID time. And so it's difficult to try and push language forward or come to some type of agreement when people aren't focused on a normal, either in-person learning situation or some type of that. So that like a lot of our reasonings for rolling the contract forward this year, this is one of those that kind of glows in that, and we'll rehab that conversation, but it'll happen hopefully in the next calendar year, when we're in a little bit more normalcy and we can have people focused on what the needs are when we're in some type of normal.
So is it your interest to roll it and to carry it over this conversation into the following year? Okay. I know we have changed some things. Yeah, let's just see. Is there interest in carrying this conversation? I don't think there's any harm in having conversation and committing to having the conversation. I think some things have changed since we added this. in the name of flexibility and thinking outside the box, we've approved the 1-year sub authorizations. And so there are classified people in our buildings who are getting compensated to serve as subs, and that never happened before. So that'll be part of this conversation is, you know, how to what extent does that affect? Is there still a need to consider other forms of coverage? So it'll be good to have the conversation. We'll change the date and roll it forward. Okay. And then the last one is the salary schedule review. So I would propose we just table that until we see where we land with the salary schedule. But
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get to a recommendation and an agreement there, and then that one becomes satisfied and we'll be able to remove that one.
okay, yeah, good. Okay. All right, well, we've gotten a lot of work done, and I think when in times past when we were together, we might have spent some time actually doing clerical work and typing up drafts but what I would propose is that we take that offline. We'll bring back some draft tentative agreement language to share with the whole group for the next meeting. We can look at each document with these date changes on it. Perhaps some 110 language change, you know, that represents our conversation. And we can do that next meeting along with looking at the dollars and drilling down more onto which salary schedule you think might best represent the interests of the most of your people. Does that sound like a good plan for next week?
Yeah, sounds great.
Is there anything else that we need to touch on today?
I don't think so. I think we're at a good spot that we, you know, kind of go until next week. I think we've had a good meeting today, and I think, you know, I just again want to say thanks to the district for your partnership and collaboration through these times, yeah, I think we're in a good spot to break till next week.
Yeah, I think it's not a stretch for me to speak on behalf of the board and the superintendent to say how very much we value our classified employees, how much they've been the backbone of our support for students in this time. And like no other group really have just flexed and risen to the sort of unique requests that have been made to, hey, don't drive a bus, come over here and hang out with some kids. Paul and Rob, you both hung out with kids in learning pods this spring. And I think we just really always feel like our classified employees are, you know, part of the heart and soul of our district, but never more so than this spring and summer. And as we came back to work this fall. So we really value the partnership with you all. Each employee in this job category or in this employee group. So thank you. Yeah, so with that, let's go ahead and end our negotiation session for today. And we will reconvene next Friday at 8 a.m. Same Zoom channel.
I like it.
All right.
Thank you all.
Okay. Have a good day, everybody. Happy Halloween.